What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football for this upcoming season. And I'll also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish every team in a specific conference, just as a synopsis of all of my schedule predictions for that said conference. And those videos are going to be coming out later on in August as we get closer to the start of the season. I still have to work through all of my individual teams. I finished the SEC. Technically, Notre Dame is the end of the ACC if you want to count them in there. If you don't, then the ACC's already done. But it's really ACC plus Notre Dame for me. And then I'm going to start in the Big 12 soon, and we will keep on rolling from there. So let's go ahead and get into this Notre Dame schedule prediction. Just some quick thoughts on the Notre Dame program as a whole heading into 2022. This is a super interesting program because of the intrigue around Marcus Freeman, and it feels like Brian Kelly, who had been at Notre Dame for forever at this point, and now we have a new head man there, and that is really, really intriguing to me. However, when you also consider the sheer amount of talent that he has inherited, and then the schedule that he has to play this year in his first year as the head coach, it gets even more interesting there. This year's schedule is absolutely brutal for Notre Dame. And, for a program like Notre Dame, though, that doesn't change the expectations at all. They expect to, no matter who you play on the schedule, when you're winning 10-plus games every single year. And they don't care that Marcus Freeman's in year one either. So that's going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out. But when you look at the roster, it's easy to see why they feel that way, because they do have one of the best rosters in the country, once again, just like they usually do. And I trust Freeman to have the defense ready to go, but the offense is going to be really interesting to watch. And with him in year one, there are a lot of potentially tricky games on the schedule to keep an eye on heading into this upcoming season. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and get into some games that aren't going to be worth talking too much about because the opponents just don't have much of a chance at winning, barring something really catastrophic happening. And those games are Marshall, UNLV, and Navy. Those three teams just aren't in the same league as Notre Dame. There's not worth really spending much time on them. So let's start it out. Week 1, night game on the road. Notre Dame goes at Ohio State to kick off the season. This is definitely one of the most anticipated games of the year. It is certainly one of the most anticipated games in Week 1. And I think it is going to be super, super interesting. I can't wait to see how this one plays out. It is a matchup of two blue blood programs, two elites in the sport at this point. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and it's really going to be Marcus Freeman. It's not his first game as head coach, but it's his first game as head coach when he's the head coach for the whole season. And man, what a way to start out on the road in Columbus, Ohio against Ohio State. It doesn't get any tougher than that to start out your career. And it's a game I think is going to be close. I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle. I think Notre Dame is going to show up well. I think they're going to fight well into the second half. But I do think Ohio State is just a better team than them. I think Notre Dame is one of the elite teams in the country. They're certainly a top 15 team in my opinion. But I think Ohio State is a top 3 team in the country. And I think there's a gap between really the top 3 or 4 teams and everybody else still. And I think Ohio State is going to get the win here. And it's really not an indictment on Notre Dame at all. There's no shame in losing on the road at Ohio State, especially with a year one head coach, week 1 to start off the season, and a game that they could very well win. They are certainly good enough to win, but Ohio State is going to be favored there. I think they should be favored. I think Ohio State gets a hard-fought win there in week 1. Next game we're going to talk about is in week 3 at home against Cal, and this is a little bit easier matchup for sure than the Ohio State one on the road. Now, Cal is no slouch. They are a good team out of the Pac-12. Definitely a game that's going to give Notre Dame a challenge, but not a game that I expect Notre Dame to struggle in too much. I think they'll probably do fine. They have the better roster across the board here than Cal. Cal's decent again, but they're just not in the same real tier as Notre Dame in my opinion. I think Notre Dame likely wins that game 2 or 3 scores or more and gets a nice win there. And then week 4, another really tough road game for Notre Dame, and they have to go at North Carolina. And while North Carolina is not the team that Ohio State is, they are still a very, very good team. I think they're going to be very good this upcoming season. I think they're basically even with Notre Dame as far as just roster-wise, things like that. And I think Mac Brown, a very experienced head coach there, I think he's got some tricks up his sleeve for this one. This is a game that I think is about as close as it can get. I've gone back and forth on them multiple different ways. I think with the home field advantage, Notre Dame with a year one head coach versus, Mac Brown, I think that Notre Dame loses this one ever so slightly, and another one they could definitely win. It is a winnable game for them for sure. They'll probably even be favored in this game. I'm really excited to see how that one plays out as well. I do think North Carolina gets the win in sort of an upset kind of game, but not a game that Notre Dame needs to look at and just be like, well, there's not a shot in that one. There's really not a team out there that Notre Dame doesn't have a shot against. Then they get a bye week before playing BYU in Las Vegas, which is an interesting little neutral site thing there. And that's a sneakily tough game. Now, BYU is not going to get the same national respect that a lot of other programs are going to get, but BYU is no slouch. That is not an easy group of 5 team. That is a tough matchup. If it was at BYU, it would be even tougher. With it being in a neutral sort of situation, it's not quite as bad. I think mainly because of that and because they're coming off a bye and they are the better team. I'm going to go with Notre Dame in this one, but that's another one with a year one head coach. You really have to get kind of concerned about how they're going to match up against a team like BYU that they may sort of take for granted. And BYU is a team that nobody really wants to play, to be honest with you. I'm going to go with Notre Dame in that one, but a very interesting game. Very, very tough one for sure. Next game up is a home game against Stanford. And Stanford is a good team heading into next year. I don't think that they're one of the better teams on the schedule for Notre Dame. Notre Dame does get them at home. Notre Dame is definitely better than them by a pretty decent margin. It's not an easy game either. Stanford is definitely going to be competitive in this one, but I still think Notre Dame probably wins this by 2 scores or more. They're just a better football team than Stanford across the board. Next game up is at Syracuse, and this is an interesting one because Syracuse is a decent football team. I don't think their record is going to show it at the end of the year, but they are a decent football team, and that's an interesting road trip to make for Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame will be fine. I think they get probably another decent 2 or 3 score win, just against a weaker team than what they have to offer. But another one where maybe kind of be on upset alert just because it's right before Clemson the week after. So maybe you catch them sleeping, looking ahead a little bit, and Syracuse can get a shocker. I don't think so, though. I think Notre Dame rolls through there and is just fine. Going to go with them to beat Syracuse pretty big. And like I said, the game after that is Clemson. Now, they get Clemson at home, which is a huge, huge help here. If they were on the road, I don't think they would have a great shot. But getting them at home is really big. And Clemson is similar to North Carolina. I think Clemson's a little bit better than North Carolina, but again, they're in Notre Dame, so I think that kind of evens it out. It's a very evenly matched game. It is a game that could go either way. I think Clemson may be a slight favorite. I don't know, though. It kind of depends on what their offense looks like. It's a game that is going to be very tight, could go either way. Going to be a hard-fought battle all the way through. I think Notre Dame wins this one at home here. It's a toss-up, though. It's really close. Like I said, though, I'm going to go with Notre Dame to win. Very close matchup. Late in the season at home, it would be a huge win for Marcus Freeman to get that one if they do pull it off. I think he does it and gets a solid win there. Then the next game up is Boston College, also at home. Another one that can be kind of scary because Boston College is a good team. They're a very physical team, and they show up ready to play every week. And Notre Dame is at USC the week after, so maybe a little bit of a look-ahead factor again. I don't think so, though. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll beat Boston College, probably by 2 scores or more. They are a noticeably better team than Boston College. But another one you don't want to take for granted. You definitely want to keep an eye on. And then, like I said, they end the season on the road at USC with Lincoln Riley running the show. Caleb Williams at quarterback. There's a lot of talent at USC. Another game that is really difficult, 100% going to be a toss-up. It's on the road, which I don't think that's going to be too big of a deal at this point. But still, a tough matchup nonetheless. Very intriguing game. USC is a wild card at this point. We know they're going to be good. We don't know how good they're going to be with Lincoln. They have a lot of holes on their roster, but they also have a lot of extreme talent on the roster. A game that really could go either way. I have them getting the win there. I think that they're a little bit more of a complete roster at this point than USC is. But USC definitely has a quarterback edge in this game, and it's a situation where that could end up making all the difference. and I could definitely understand why people would pick USC to win this one. I'm going to go with Notre Dame in another very close matchup, but definitely a game that is very intriguing to end the season, one to keep an eye on for sure. And so that would make Notre Dame 10-2 on the year, which is really, with this schedule, an absolutely incredibly good record, especially in year one under Marcus Freeman. Honestly, an 11-win season is also possible, assuming they could beat North Carolina, where I have them losing. But if you're realistic about that, they could also slip up on a few teams, teams like a BYU, Clemson, and USC. And really, those teams shouldn't be considered real slip-ups, to be honest, because they are just that good of teams, At USC is a game that any team in America could lose. Home against Clemson, another one that most any team in America could lose. So you can call them slip-up if you want. They're not really slip-up. It's just a brutal schedule. You could see them slip into 9-3, maybe even 8-4. I'm going to say they go 10-2. I'm confident in them. If they do beat North Carolina, I think they'll probably drop one of the USC or Clemson games. I think they're going to win 2 of those 3. So 10-2 is where I land, but again, I could definitely understand 9-3 as well. Regardless of the schedule, though, Notre Dame fans are going to expect a 10-win or better season just about every single year. This one is going to be no different. And while I do think they get to 10, there are a lot of tough games in the schedule that really could give them trouble. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you guys agree and or disagree with me on the Notre Dame schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think that they're going to have next year and who, if anybody, they're going to lose to. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to go ahead and leave a like because it does help out the channel tremendously. It lets me know you're enjoying this kind of content. And subscribe to the channel for more college football content in the future. Like I said, starting the Big 12 soon. I've just finished up the ACC. I finished up the SEC. Lots more content coming your way soon, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.